Welcome to August Leetcode Challenge. Today's problem is sum of square numbers. Given a non-negative integer c, decide whether there are two integers a and b such that a squared plus b squared equals c. If we're given c equals 5, we know that we could square 1 plus 2 squared equals 5, so this is going to be a true. 3 though, there's no possibility. 4, we can do 2 squared plus 0 squared, and that's going to equal 4. So really this problem, we can first figure out what are some things we know for certain. Like we certainly just go brute force and say for, let's say a, do a for loop, nested for loop from 0 to 5, and just check to see if we can get a squared plus b squared in a nested for loop, right? But that would be n squared. Could we do better than that? Well, one thing we could note for sure is that the highest value for a and b is going to be the square root of c. And that makes sense because at the worst case scenario, squaring this number, like for instance 4, we square, that's going to be 2, and we know the other number has to be 0, right? So that kind of gives us the bounds there already. What we can do is square root our c, and that's going to give us the upper bounds for a and b. So let's start off by doing that. Call it square, and we're just going to do a square root of c, but make sure to convert this to an integer. So if that's the case, maybe we can try to calculate this by saying for a in range of square plus 1, because we want to include 0 and the number itself, we could just calculate to see if we can find this other integer that's going to equal c at the end of the day. And we know it has to be an integer, right? So what we might do here is say, let's calculate the b, which would be b equals c subtracted by a times a. And this would currently be the square root, right? It would be b squared. So we want to square root this like this. And ultimately, if this is an integer, that means this is possible. So if b equals int of b, then we can return a true immediately. Otherwise, if we get through this loop, then it doesn't work, then there's no number. So that. And looks like it's working. Submit it. And there we go, accepted. So time complexity is going to be O of n plus the square root here, though, is going to be O of whatever, O of y. So it's going to be O of n plus O of y. We do use constant space. We could avoid doing the square root calculation every single time by creating a hash, kind of like the two-sum here. What we'll do is create a set, we'll call it squares, and we're going to have a for loop for this. Put it up here, and let's just calculate the squares right here like that. If that's the case, all we need to do then is just check to see for a in squares. Well, it's technically the a squared here, but what we'll do is check to see if c, well, we'll call it b equals c minus a. If b, since these are squares already, if b is inside of our squares, right, then that means this is also true. So if b in squares, then return true. Otherwise, we can get through the loop, so we'll return a false. So this should also work. It is a little bit faster, but we do use a little extra space here, O of n space. Now, I did see another solution where you can use 2 pointers, saving us a little bit more space, but I think at that point it's kind of over-engineering. I think right here is good enough. So we'll end it here. Thanks for watching my channel. Remember, do not trust me. I know nothing.